Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like this is totally different me starting it. Normally it's Yvonne saying, "Hey Luke," and I go, "Hey Yvonne," and then we go on this random conversation about the weather. But today I am just going to start this podcast, and I already know you might be listening right now thinking, "Oh, this is different." And different's okay because today Yvonne isn't going to just be my co-host today. Yvonne is going to be my guest, as Yvonne has been spending her time writing her first book that is called The God Imprint. And I've got her on the show today to share with us what inspired her to write this book, and more importantly, who the book is for and what is the message of the book. So, Yvonne, welcome to On the Road to
Hi.
Damascus.
Why, thank you for having me, Luke. I really appreciate it.
It's lovely having you on the show. So, like I just mentioned, normally we're doing this podcast, we're interviewing guests, bringing hope to people through the stories and the experiences. And today we're going to be speaking about your new book that you have just written, which is called The God Imprint. So, my first question is, where did you get the name from? Why is it called The God Imprint?
I actually had a dream about the name. I had a dream where I don't actually remember what happened in the dream. I just remember that there was a man kind of standing on the street and he kept saying to me, the God imprint, the God imprint. And I was like, what? The God imprint. And I woke up and I was like, "Ah, the God imprint. That's different." So I had to actually go find like what does imprint mean? What does it look what does it sound like? Does Is that something, like along the lines or alignment of how I feel about stuff? And I realized it was exactly everything right to the T of how I want to express my life to the world.
Hmm, interesting. So, my next question is, what is the God imprint then? What is it?
So, an imprint, okay, so there's this movie, it's called Fly Away Home. It was made up here in Canada, and it's about this little girl who finds a bunch of geese eggs. And when they hatch, they saw her first, and so then they followed her around. And what an imprint is that the first few hours that you are born, whether an animal or a human, what you do is you actually imprint, you pick up the mannerisms, characteristics of the person who you are the closest to. So if you are, you don't have, really close family, but you have really close friends, you pick up their mannerisms, you pick up how they do life, you pick those things up. And it was really important to me when God gave me the name, the God Imprint. It's because I spent a lot of my time projecting God's character and love into the world. So for me, the God Imprint really represented how I wanted to live my life, that the closest person to me was Him, and that I picked up everything that He was, and that reflects in my life.
Mm, love it. When you say that, it makes me think about that. It's like the moral argument we all have. Like like every human being is kind of everyone kind of knows right from wrong in some way. It's like it's imprinted in our hearts, and all I can think is like when we say that God made us in His image and in His likeness. Is that what you mean by like an imprint on ourselves, like God's likeness, goodness within us, without us really knowing? Or
Yeah, so there's quite a few verses in the Bible that talks about, you were chosen before the world, you were made in his image, you were created for a purpose on purpose. We have all of these things. And when we go to try to describe them to people, it's like in order to get to that very core being, and I want to say like back to the original model that we were created, we have to actually strip the layers of the world because we live in the world. So it's like we come into the world and then we have these layers put on us, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Things just happen. right? You don't have great parents, or there was a traumatic incident, or you had a loving home, and like you just, there's so many different variants of it. But at some point you actually have to strip that back and go to the original model that he created you to be, and that's where you find the imprint of who he made you to be.
Wow. So it's like our most authentic self, our original imprint in one sense before the world imprinted on us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what we look like before we wear the world.
Ooh. Okay, that's powerful. So what what inspired you to write this book? Why do you think God gave you the title? Why is it so close to your heart? Because it seems like an incredible topic. I'm already excited to read it. I know I have read the first chapter, which made me cry. Um, why did God give you this book? Why is it on your heart to bring this to the world?
It's actually really my passion and my calling for people to understand their really authentic selves. And I have gone on this long journey from the moment I was born to today. And when I say that, I'm not saying that I'm my true authentic self. I'm getting there. I'm getting to the places that I want to be. But I have gone on this really deep journey. And sometimes you don't even realize you've gone on this deep journey until you've reflected and went, oh, yeah, okay, I see how you've lined that up for my good so that I could find myself. And so I wanted to share my stories of victory and inspiration for other people who are in the world going, how do I get that? How do I find that? How do I be that? And it was so important to me to encourage people that he wants to do that with you. He did it with me. He'll do it with you. This is how he did it with me. Here maybe a few tips and tricks on what happened, but it's everybody's original journey. So what
Mm,
happened to me is not going to happen to you. How
mm.
I came to be who I am is not going to happen to other people. But what's really great is that because it happened to me, it will happen to you.
When when did you discover? I know we have you have a language, the God imprint now. God gave you the language to communicate the message in one sense that's always been on your heart. When did you first discover God's imprint in your own life?
The earliest do you, like the earliest moment I met God. I met God when I was at this church, and I went down to the basement. It was Sunday school. I've never gone to church in my entire life. My family is not a church going family. And this lady gave me a page to color. And I looked at this page and I went, I know this man. I know this man loves me. And that happened when I was 5 years old. And there's something that happened, and it's that memory. You don't remember much when you're young, never mind at 5 years old. And I don't really remember all of it, but what I do remember is that feeling, that moment of clarity out of everything that was happening. It was like I was known for the very first time out of everyone around me. He knew me so deep, and even thinking about that, there was no words that you can give a 5-year-old to say. It's like, Jesus loves me, right? We sing the song, Jesus loves me, this I know. And so you kind of know, but then you don't know until you're older and you reach back into your memories and go, he's been chasing me ever since then. He's been chasing me and fighting for me ever since that moment. And I didn't realize that until I spent my time with my struggles, and I watched him fight for me, and I didn't know what was happening. And now that I'm sitting here and I put all those experiences and I look back, I can go, wow, I have a really rich history with God, and I didn't even know it.
Well, I think that's really inspiring and very. very important for our audience to know is that, you know, you never grew up a Christian, like you just said. Like, you didn't grow up in a faith-based home. It wasn't, we hear Jesus loves us, or culturally we hear a Jesus. Like, come on, the guy represents how we divide time
Yeah.
universally. So he's spoken about both in good and negative ways throughout culture. But it's interesting that you say that God's been chasing you down, or God knew you before you knew him. Tell people a little bit about your childhood, because I know that the world hasn't been necessarily kind on you. What was your childhood like?
It was very rough. My mom didn't want me, and she told me that on a few occasions where she said that she wished she had an abortion. Um, I didn't know who my dad was, and the man who I thought was my dad turned out to be my stepdad, and I didn't know that till I was 12. To this day, I've never been given the name of who my father is. And I grew up in a home where she did a lot of drugs, she did a lot of drinking, a lot of gambling, and there was many times we didn't have food, and there was a lot of times that you had to be very careful in what you did because a backhand was, any time that you stepped out of place. So there was a lot of abuse that happened emotionally and physically, to the points where we moved to a lot of different houses and I changed schools because the government system, our child family services, would show up at my school and want to talk to me. And then we moved. And then we moved again. And so that was the game that she played, where we there wasn't something solid or foundational in my childhood. It was a constant moving to escape everything that was happening.
Hmm. It's like I mentioned before, I've read chapter one
Yeah.
of the book, which made me cry. And you know, we won't give away all the book because we do want people to go and buy it when it's out, to go to pre-sale, which will be coming soon. There's a bit in chapter one that I believe reveals how God was already working in your life at your hardest time as a young person, and that was through your grandmother.
Yeah.
Share with us how much of an impact she had on your life, and I'd love for you to also at the end share what God said to you about your grandmother in chapter one, because it's very powerful.
So my grandmother was there the day I was born. She was the one who noticed that the cord was wrapped around my neck, really tight. So it was a good thing she was there. She was probably the person who saved my life at that point, and then literally saved my life in my childhood. Um, she gave me the love when I couldn't be loved. She gave me a lot of laughter, a lot of joy. She taught me how to be playful. She taught me how to overcome circumstances. So when I wasn't getting that at home and I would go to my grandmother's, it was a lot of time where we played video games, and you can't imagine, some people are like, oh, my grandmother would never do that. My grandmother bought like the original Nintendo so that we could play Super Mario together, or it was many evenings of listening to Elvis Presley by record because that was her favorite singer, and it was just, we didn't even have to talk. It was just one of those people you just had that connection to. Yeah, I just knew that I was loved and I knew that I was safe where I was. And that going to her house provided that for me because I didn't have that when I was with my mom.
Hmm. Was your grandma a Christian or anything like that? Or was you not?
No, well, not that I know of.
Hmm.
I've never seen her go to church. My grandmother was the type of grandmother who still wore short shorts and tube tops, and she got pulled over by the police for driving too fast when we went to McDonald's. And, she breathed life wherever she went. She brought joy wherever she went. And it's probably some of the main characteristics that I actually picked up to who I am today, bringing life to people, bringing joy to people. It was because she did that for me, and she gave me that opportunity to be a little kid when I didn't get to be a kid at home. She gave me that opportunity to just enjoy some of the things in life. And yeah, it was my favorite place to be.
Hmm. So for our listeners, obviously, we may all have them types of people in our lives. Whether it could have been a parent, might not have been a parent, grandparent, uncle, auntie, maybe a friend, relative, whoever it is who, to use your word, we imprinted on from the world. You can have negative experiences, positive experiences. But you mentioned in the book that your grandmother didn't actually stay in your life very long. Could you tell us more
No.
about that?
Yeah, she passed away when I was 12. And the thing that, she went in for a checkup and then was taken to the hospital, and then just it was quickly she just passed. I didn't get to see her at the hospital. I didn't get to, the last time you saw her was that was it, because she had cancer and it just overtook her, and she was just gone. And it happened so fast, right? So there was no time to prepare a heart to lose the most important person in your life. And I think it was harder because I didn't have anybody else to replace that most important person in my life. So it was the biggest struggle I had to struggle with, growing up, was because, when I started going to church when I was like 23, I had to reconcile that with God. You took away the most important person in my life, and now you're telling me you want to be the most important person in my life.
Ye- So this comes right on to the bit where I was in floods of tears. Um, so you have these mini conversations with God throughout the book, which I absolutely love because knowing you as well as I do now, I know how you speak with God. It's literally like he's in the room. And you have these conversations with God, but you write at the end of this chapter or during the chapter that moment where you have a conversation with God about that very fact that, in your words, he took away your grandmother.
Yeah.
What was that conversation and what did God say to you?
So that conversation came, at the time where I was just discovering what a Christian looked like, started going to church, and then what it meant to give your life to God. And so my conversation went, you know, I'm not doing this. I'm going to run away. Like, I can't, this is too much emotions. Running away is easier for me. And especially when you lose somebody you love, you just want to run away. You don't want to feel those emotions. So my conversation went this. I said, I'm running away. And God said to me, Hey, what are you doing? I said, Don't talk to me. I don't know you. He said, Yes, you do, Yvonne. I said, No, I don't. You took away my grandmother and now you want me to trust you. Then he said to me, he goes, I did not take your grandmother, Yvonne. I gave her to you when you needed someone to love you in the most important time of your life. When the world failed her, I gave you her to keep hope and vision of what your life would look like. And I said to him, What is the point of all of this? And he said, So you will come find me one day.
You got me crying again now. Um, there's there's something in that with God's reply there of I didn't take her away from you, I gave her to you, which is so profound because it really changes the narrative. It really changes the way that we see how you perceived your experience of the situation, and how God actually tells you the truth in what happened. I think it moves me so much and brings me to tears, because it makes you do the very thing that you talked about before, about looking back in your life and seeing how God had been chasing you or working with you, or moving in your life, all the things that he has given you. I think most people often think about, and who are very angry at God, about all the things that he's taken away from them.
Yeah.
And that one sentence of, I didn't take her away, I gave her to you, just just shows God's nature and his love for his children. And I just know that that one line is going to bring so much healing to people now who are listening, and people who are going to buy the book. Who is this book for? Who do you believe God wants to read this book, or who do you want this book to go to?
You know, I wanted to go for people who feel like their circumstances are hopeless. You know, and I want it to be because I had this amazing opportunity in my life, you know, and people read the book and be like, "Oh, it wasn't that amazing." But I can look back and I can say that now. 12 years I had my grandmother. And when I didn't have my grandmother, you know, and as you read later on, you'll see that I understood that there was a rich history of God who was with me when I thought he wasn't. And I can look back and see that now. But it took me so many years to get to that point in my life to come and see that. And I want to give that opportunity to people so much quicker. I want them to understand so much faster the rich history of God chasing you looks like. So if you're going, it's too much, I can't do this, you know, I can't be this person, you know, I came from nothing, or, you know, like I haven't been given these chances or these opportunities. This book is for people to go, but wait, if he can do this for me, he can do this for you. And if
Mm,
you don't see it, this is how I saw it. Read this and now go back and look, because you've missed something. You didn't see something. And every chapter, there's somebody who has changed my perspective, who went, look a little bit higher, Yvonne, look to the left a little bit more, Yvonne, widen your view, Yvonne, you know, like think more 2D, think more 3D, think more 4D. Come on, Yvonne, think more. You know, like it's this cheering on. And I had it because he set me up to have every single person in my life to do that. And I want to be that for somebody in their life. I want to be that for somebody who goes, look a little bit higher. You're not seeing it. It's right there. Keep looking. You can do it. Way to go. How awesome for you. Because I had that. I want to be that for other people.
that's beautiful. If there was somebody listening now who is been in that situation, right? Is the hopeless, feels like they've been dealt just the wrong cards. That's the saying that we have. Like, you're just given the wrong hand. How What would you say to somebody who just really does believe that the world was against them, God was against them? Why me? Like, think about it. You grew up in an abusive home with an abusive mother. Your childhood if I was going to give a child the best start to life, on paper was not the one that you was handed, how can you now sit here all them years later and say, God loves me, God chose me, he's working all things out for my good, when to a lot of people they'll be thinking he put you in that situation. I know a lot of our audience who've experienced that amount of pain, that might be their narrative. Why would a God like this love me and put me through this? What what would you say to them people?
What I would say is it's only hopeless if you say it's hopeless. And the reason I say that is because the moment I changed the narrative of my own story, I saw in color instead of black and white. When I saw, whether God was for me or against me, that's all I saw. But when I changed, then when the narrative was changed in my mind, where I started understanding that hope was very much alive in my life, all of a sudden my story filled up with color. And what I thought was black and white was maybe like forest green or navy blue. You know, things changed because I changed the way I thought about the world. Things changed because of the way that I thought about God. And things changed because I changed the perspective of who I was. And so when we decide that we are not the story the world says we are, that's when I actually got to step into the real story of who God said I was.
That's so profound. How long's that journey been though? Like, are people going to read this book and be like radically healed? Or how long was that journey of you realizing, you started seeing in color? Obviously, you've come with this message now. How long has this journey actually been for you?
Well, my journey and where I've ended my book. So my book is 12 chapters, and I actually ended my chapter of last year.
Okay.
So last year I was 38. So it's been 38 years of learning this. But here's something that I want people to understand. A lot of that time, it was just me. A lot of that time was just me and God. And a lot of that time was me having to sit still enough, put my emotions away enough so that He can speak to me. It actually, when it kicked into high gear, when I actually started really stepping into my story, because it was a little bit of color, but when I really did, I had a community of people around me. And they kept reminding me, Yvonne, you are enough. Yvonne, you are good. Yvonne, God has got you. It's okay. And so when that kicked in the high gears, when I had my community, and so people will go, yeah, it's going to take a long time if you do it yourself. Anything takes a long time when you do it yourself. And then actually we kind of give up because it becomes no fun anymore, and it's exhausting and it's tiring and there's nobody there to cheer you on. But if you get into a community of people, something that took me 38 years, I mean, depending on what you're dealing with, I'm going to say probably takes 5 years to walk through. When you have people to give you the language to what took me 10 years to understand, you're going to be speaking a language within months. That's different. That's so different. But somebody had to go forward first. Somebody had to pioneer that first. And as I wrote the end of my book today, the greatest honor of my life that He could give me is pioneering a path so that other people could be hopeful for the things that they have in their life.
It's interesting that, the God imprint seems to be the vehicle in which you're going to share this message with the world. And I think about what you just said about there, somebody pioneering, going ahead of you so they can give you the language, can equip you. Tell us why you founded, because we're the co-founders of Damascus Experience, right? And when I say we're the co-founders, is in, we established the organization together. We're starting to build it together. But the original vision was yours. Why Damascus Experience? How does it tie into your message of hope and what you're trying to articulate through the God Imprint?
So when I was building, when I was trying to figure out what God wanted me to do, and with a ministry or a business, and at the time I didn't really know you, but we were chatting a little bit about it, and I was sitting with God and I was like, okay, God, a ministry, what am I going to do? And he said to me, he goes, what do you want to do, Yvonne? And I said, okay. So I have all this, I have a whole buffet in front of me now, right? Whereas before I only got to eat this, or I got to eat this because, like you're a little baby and then you're a teenager and then you're picky about everything. But then I had this big buffet in front of me. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to bring hope to people. I want to inspire people. I want people to just feel like the love of God, because that's how I feel. He goes, okay. I said, okay, how am I going to do this? We're going to start a ministry. We're going to do this. Oh, I got to come up with a really great name, God. And I started like bouncing names. This is my conversation with God. I'm bouncing names off of God. So I'm imagining he's sitting in my kitchen. I'm like, road, trail, path, journey, experience, right? Like all these words are coming to my mind. And all of a sudden God's just like, Damascus. I was like, what is that? I'm pretty sure that's in the Bible. Let me go look. And so I
Wait for a second. So God gives you Damascus, and you didn't know what that meant. It kind of resonated with you, but you didn't really know what it was.
Well, I knew it was something in the Bible. I just didn't know exactly what it was. So I go to the back of the Bible to find where, all the verses about Damascus is. And I start reading those. And what really stood out is Paul had an encounter on the road to Damascus. He was a man who persecuted Christians. Like he went out of his way to kill people who adored God, and God encountered him and changed his life. Look, if God can change Paul, he can change anybody. Like he can change anybody. If you are willing, it's going to be easier. Like Paul was blinded. So for some people, if some people need to be blinded for that, right? I had to go through a transition where I had to be silent because I just talked too much. But God radically changed Paul on the road to Damascus. There's hope for every single person. There's no picking and choosing who gets hope. Everyone gets hope. We just forgot. We forgot about it. And so when we created Damascus Experience, it was to inspire the world with hope.
And it's funny because if you think about everything that we're doing, some of you may be listening over the last few podcasts and we speak about Epoch Coaching. That's something that we've been mentioning about. Why don't you share with the audience? Why? Because God gave you that name as well. You got that name from God. Why Epoch Coaching? Why have you brought this into Damascus? Why has it been a part of your journey? Because I already know that, the things that we're doing with Epoch Coaching, I know you'll explain to the audience exactly what that is in a minute. Like, these are things that you learn over the last 30 odd years to deal with your healing and to know how God's working. So this is everything that is in the book, kind of a practical tool in one sense. What is Epoch Coaching?
My biggest my biggest struggle and that I found is being in timing with God. Because either I'm really, really behind, or I'm way ahead of him. And when God does time, he does God time. Like he just walks and in a certain way and how he wants, and you have to walk in step. Now, I always picture like my kids when they were little, when they get excited, they'll either run ahead, or if they don't want to go somewhere, they you have to drag them. But when you walk in step with them, even with their little legs, it's like four little steps to your one big step, right? Because they're trying to keep up, really. But there's something about being in timing with God that accelerates everything that happens in your life. But you have to understand that timing. You have to understand the season you are in, what you are trying to do in that season, and then when to transition that season. And for me, I had to learn that, and I had to learn it the hard way, unfortunately. But that's okay. I'm good now. We're all good. We're in timing now. But when people understand that, all of a sudden breakthrough happens. Breakthrough happens faster than people expect because they're in timing and they're in season. And there's times where you lay things down, and there's times where God's going, I need you to pick that up again, Yvonne. I need you to pick that up because now we're going into the new season, and you need that for your next season. It's like when you're running around, you're going, okay, I need this and I need this. We're going to the beach, and oh, don't forget this and don't forget that. I don't take winter jackets to the beach, right? But I have 3 hungry kids, so I make sure I bring food with them. And so it's learning to navigate your season so you're getting the most out of it, and then getting ready to transition into the next season. And we see that when we watch Moses lead the Israelites out of Egypt. They were impatient in their season, and then they wanted to go back to their old season, being in Egypt. And then they didn't even then they missed the promised land completely. The whole generation missed the promised land because they never got to go get where they were going. And there's a timing and a seasons that happens. So one of the things that I've taken away in my book is that my timings and seasons only happen when God says it's time.
Can you give me an example of when you had to realize that, when God taught you that lesson? I know you probably have many.
So God gave me a word at a conference, and I was really excited. And this is what I want to call the original promise. This is where he told me, Yvonne, one day you're going to stand on a stage and inspire people. And what I thought that meant is, one day, Yvonne, you're going to be a youth pastor and you're going to go work in a church. I don't know why. Maybe because the guy who was talking was a youth pastor. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be like him. Okay, I'm going to be a youth pastor. And so I decided that that's exactly what God meant, and that's what I needed to do. So I started looking up schools. Like, I decided that this is what I'm doing. I need to be doing this, and I need to do this, and I'm going to be a youth pastor. Oh my gosh, like, I'm going to help people. I'm going to help kids, and it's going to be amazing. And then all of a sudden it was like, and so you're not part of any of the leadership team. You need to go home and, like, work your family a bit. And it was like, but did you not hear that God gave me a promise? I'm pretty sure I told you that. Did you not hear the most important thing that happened in my life? God gave me a promise. Come on, guys. Like, let's all get on board. And I was out of season. For 12 years, I was out of season. There was quite a few things that he wanted me to, he was teaching me before I made it to that part in my life. 12 years I was out of season. So yes, that was a that was a desert season, because that was a long time of learning.
Is it one that is hilarious, but two, it, even I take so much away from that already. Definitely within the Christian community, I know all our listeners aren't Christian or anything like that, but something that's very common in the Christian community is we get given these words. So whenever Yvonne says, "I got a word from God," it's normally through like a prophetic message, whether somebody's been praying for you and gives a message on the behalf of God, or it might be an inspired thought. God says something to you in a moment, or you get an impression, a feeling. These are all the things that when we talk about got a word, we're getting a
Mhm.
word. But within the Christian community, we do this a lot. We even put on events that people are so kind of like addicted. They're like catnip for Christians. Do you
Yeah.
know what catnip is? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my gosh, like a prophetic event. I'm gonna get a word from God, and you run and you go, and sometimes there's like little stations where you go and get your word, and
Yeah.
someone goes to one station, and you're like, oh, don't really agree with that. I'm gonna go to the other person, and you bunny hop around all the stations. And what tends to happen is everyone just tends to give you a similar word in a similar way. But what I find really interesting is that people constantly go back, or what people do is they make these decisions of, oh, you said it, so I'm gonna just go and do it now. I've even experienced it in my own life where I've tried to fit my life in the current season around the prophetic word that I was given in this season. You know, God says that you're called to business. All right, brilliant. All right, so I'm going to stop everything that I'm doing now. I'm going to set up a business. And like what you said, it goes well out of season. You get so confused, you get disheartened,
Yeah.
like you end up questioning, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? Was that really the word for me? And you can get really, really well, it can do a lot of damage to your relationship with God, and also your faithfulness and belief in what God's calling you to do. So when we talk about Epoch Coaching and consulting, when we're working with people to identify the season, to identify or how to transition into the next one, this is why we're saying it's so important to be equipped to do this, because we can end up, to use your analogy, like the Israelites in the desert, going getting stuck and it taking 40 years rather than you know a few years. There's another thing that Damascus is going to be doing later on in this year, which is called the royal priesthood.
Yeah.
I know this one really excites you.
Yeah.
Can you tell our audience, because I don't think we've actually spoke about it to our audience, that where did the concept of royal priesthood come into to your lessons throughout the last 38 years, the lesson that God's talked to you about the imprint? How does the imprint align with the royal priesthood?
I have a chapter in my book. It's called "The Fight That You Never Knew About," and it basically it's what it is. It's about all things spiritual and what's kind of going on in the spiritual realm as you're just living your day to day life. And what really was important about it is that I was really tormented for so many years, and not in a like nice little way. Like I did not sleep. There would be times I would just not sleep. I'd sleep maybe 2 hours, was sleeping with lights on. Like I was just tormented constantly, and for so many years. And the more that I pushed into God, the more tormented I was. And so what I would do is I would do like little things for God, just enough so the tormenting wasn't so bad, and then I can just kind of live in both worlds, because I didn't know what was going on. Nobody had words or language for any of this. Like I talked to people and they'd be like, just pray it, just say in Jesus name. I'm like, I don't know if you've ever stood in a house and went in Jesus name, and then like one of those things are laughing at you, like it doesn't always work, right? My little legs are shaking. You're just like, in Jesus name, please go away so I can go to sleep. um sometimes it works, but I was finding that often it wasn't working for me, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, I love God, I love Jesus, I believe in him. Okay, so why isn't this working? Like, I don't understand. And so, this is many years later. I get into this conference and I had this experience there where I realized that, and there's way more detail, but I don't want to take away from that chapter. But what I did realize is that there was a difference between just accepting Christ and being a child of God.
Mm.
When I accepted Jesus, but I knew that I could unaccept him. So I accepted him and I could unaccept him. But being a child of God, there was only a one-way path. There was only one way you can go. And when I realized I was a child of God and I knew that there was no other way to live, no other way to be, I got to receive the inheritance of everything my father had. And that came with authority. And now, when I went into my house with the kingly authority and declared it to leave, it had to listen to me because the king decreed it. I had permission to decree it, and it had to listen to the higher authority, which was Jesus. And I realized, oh, I wasn't stepping into the authority that was rightfully mine.
Wow. So the royal priesthood is going to be coming out later this year, and we're going to be equipping people to understand what the royal priesthood, how you are a royal priesthood, all to do with that identity of being a child of God, how to deal with all the things that you said, which I'm very, very excited for. So, if everybody is really, really interested in everything that Yvonne's speaking about, I think what's so exciting, Yvonne, one, I can't wait for the listeners to read the book. I can't wait to read it all. You know, like I mentioned before, chapter one had me in tears, so I've got to get a box of tissues ready. If it's now 12 chapters. We also mentioned also about Epoch Coaching and Consulting. For everyone listening, that is out now. So if you're interested in that service, if you're interested in having coaching with myself and Yvonne, learning your season, learn to identify in your season, or learning how to transition into your next season, or if you're a business owner, you own a business, or anybody you may know who has a business that needs transition. You're trying to do something with your business. You're trying to expand its vision. You just don't know how to navigate in that space. Epoch Consulting is just for you as well. So head over to www.damascusexperience.com and head over to go and see. I think it's under We Send. I think it's under We Send, isn't it? If you go to our website, and it
Epoch
says,
is under We Equip.
is it?
Yeah.
E-Equip. So if we go to We Equip, where it says, what do we do? You'll see Epoch in there. You can fill out a little form, tell us what you're interested in doing, and one of our team will get back to you in the ways that we can help and support you. If you're interested in the royal priesthood, we are going to be sending out some more information to you guys very, very soon. And if you are more importantly interested in Yvonne's new book coming out in the summer, the God Imprint, then if you head over to our website, there's a little tab that says Our Books. It's under Projects, and you'll be able to click the link to register your interest when the book goes on pre-sale. So I hope everyone enjoyed this week's episode. I've enjoyed listening to your story, Yvonne, and I'm so excited for the world to hear your message. If there's anything else that you would like to say to our viewers, what would it be?
Dream big. Dream big. There is no dream too small for God. So dream big.
Love it. From somebody that has had a life that many people would say is hopeless to now be somebody who says that anything is possible. I think that's you in a nutshell. So, guys, if you enjoyed this week's episode, We would love to get to know our community. This is something that me and Yvonne have really been speaking about. We want to know who our listeners are by name. We want to know your testimonies. We want to know what you're going through. So make sure that you're following us on our social media sites. If you head over to Instagram, Damascus Experience, DM us, tell us your story, tell us about the podcasts that have been inspiring you, that have brought hope to you. If you're somebody who is listening who says, wait, I have a story, I have a testimony, and I'd love to share it on the show, if you head over to www.damascusexperience.com and you go to the contact us page, write to us, tell us your story, why you want to be on the show, and we would love to get you guys on. But for now, from myself and Yvonne, we hope you have the most incredible week. God bless you all, and we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.